Hi everybody and welcome back to Kevin's Upfront Opinion today. So thought I'd do day 4 of Down Syndrome Awareness Month. And what I thought I'd do today is take a look at some of the misconceptions, because a lot of people think if you have a child with Down syndrome, okay, they're going to be inundated with loads of problems, which isn't always the case. Yes, they can have a few issues, okay, but it's not always the case that they're going to be inundated with health problems. Now, if you take into account my daughter Jasmine, okay, and I've made a little note of some of the issues that she has. So my daughter is 5, okay. Now she has thyroid issue. Okay, don't ask me which way it is, whether it's overactive or underactive. I can never remember. That's down to my wife to remember. And you can call me sexist later. She has low muscle tone, which means in the end, she's extremely flexible as well. I mean, she can go to sleep doing almost the splits, to be honest. And I've got photographs of her in her wheelchair with her legs out like that. And she's going to sleep in her wheelchair. Okay. Now, she has a wheelchair just to help her because she does have issues with walking. And the other thing, she was born with a heart issue. So when she was, about 4 to 5 months old, she had an AVSD TOF repair, which, to cut it really short and easy for you to understand for anybody who wants to know, she had 3 holes in the heart. She had an undersized pulmonary artery. I think it was pulmonary artery, which is the one which feeds blood down to the lungs. Okay, and one of the, well, should I say one of the valves, 2 of the valves had moulded into one, and they had to make 2 new valves. Okay, so they are the main issues that she had. Now, obviously, the heart issue has pretty much been fixed. Yes, she will need more heart surgery, but much further down the line. So I thought I'd go through the top 25 issues that children with Down syndrome, and I don't really like even using the word issues, so I'm going to go from lowest to highest. Now, the first one isn't going to affect females, okay, which is undescended testicles, which is only 20%. So we're talking about really low numbers at the end of the day. Then you've got something that's known as strabismus, which I probably pronounced incorrectly, which you're looking at 35%, which is, it's basically an eye disorder in which the eyes don't properly align, okay, with each other when you're looking at an object. So it's basically to do with focus at the end of the day. So it's only 35%. 40%, I've already spoken about it, heart conditions. You know, people think it's way higher than that. It's only 40% at the end of the day. So it's less than half. The next one is protruding tongues, which is something that people talk about quite a lot, where people seem to think that kids with Down syndrome's tongues are always poking out. They're not always poking out. Okay, so it's only 47%. Now we're going to be going over the halfway mark, which is the single transverse pulmonary crease. Now, this is one of the things, but when a child's born and they think it's going to have Down syndrome, they basically look at the hands. And if you look on mine here, you've got 3 here, where on a Down syndrome, you normally have 1 here. I'm just looking on a picture, and you normally have another one which is here. Okay, so they only have 1 main single crease, unlike everybody else. Then they, at 56%, is something which is known as brush-filled spots in the iris. So it's just little speckled spots that in the iris. If you ever look at a Down syndrome child, just look at that, look in their iris, and sometimes you'll see speckled spots. Okay, now that's known as brush-filled. Now, something that is quite common, 60%. Now, my daughter doesn't have this, and she gets checked for this every year: sleep apnea, or obstructive sleep apnea. Yet again, 60% short necks, and 60% is shortened hands. And what everybody seems to think that kids with or adults with Down syndrome have, which is slanted eyes, which is what people always look for, you know. And I always say to people, I don't see it in my daughter. I really don't. There's occasional when she's normally angry with me, when I might notice it, but 9 times out of 10, I don't even notice it. And a lot of people say it's because I spend too much time with her. Now, another common one, and I know that my daughter does have this, which is abnormal teeth. So, what basically happens, or can happen, is that their teeth can get overcrowded because their mouths are so much smaller. So their teeth can get overcrowded. So they end up having to have teeth taken out. Now, I know my daughter had to have them. What was it? She had about, I think it was about 4 teeth taken out last year by via surgery. So that's what can happen. And I know she's got a few teeth that look like vampire teeth, to be honest. But yet again, 60%. Now, another really, really common one, if you ever interact with a child with Down syndrome, ask them to take their shoes and socks off. Because what I'll do is I'll use my hand. I'm not taking my shoes and socks off. But they normally have, for most people, you put your foot out like that. Okay, and you got your toes. Their big toe and the toe next to it goes like that. So it goes like that. Instead of being like that, like most people, theirs is like that. They tend to have a big gap between these, which is separation of first and second toe. So that is extremely common, 68%. Another one, flattened nose, okay, which is at 68%. Another common one is abnormal outer ears. So the way that their ears go, so unlike most people's, their ears tend to be slightly different, and they tend to have large tongues, which is at 75%. Most of them do. And yet again, it's a bit of a misconception. Yes, they do have large tongues, but it's because of their jaws. Their jaws tend to be smaller, so it looks like they got really big tongues, and that's why their tongues poke out, so they can draw in oxygen properly. So they tend to have large tongues. Now, as I've already said about my daughter, when she, I remember taking her down to the market during the summer, and she fell asleep in her wheelchair, and she literally had her legs were like that. And everybody was laughing because they thought, how on earth does she do that? Some of the positions she can sleep in, I wouldn't even dream of, because I'll probably be getting taken to A&E. But people with Down syndrome do tend to be extremely flexible, okay? And they tend to have flat heads as well, yet again at 75%. 80% tend to have low muscle tone. Funny thing that they don't talk about on this graph is how bloody strong they are. The amount of injuries I've personally suffered from my daughter. I've had 2 concussions. I've had a broken tooth off her. I've had a black eye off her. Okay. When I got the black eye, never went out for 2 weeks. In case anybody thought it was my wife knocking me about, I thought, right, better stay at home. What it was, my daughter actually gave me the black eye. Okay, which only a few people actually know about that, and I was too embarrassed to tell anybody it was actually my daughter that actually gave me it. So yeah, they do have low muscle tone, but they're also extremely strong. Obviously, increased skin on the back of the neck at 80%. At 90%, have what's known as an umbilical hernia, and 90% also a stunted growth. So they tend to be a bit shorter, which is extremely common. Another common thing, which I actually found out recently, which isn't on this chart as well, they tend, and my daughter's goes in for this one as well, they tend to get extremely hairy arms and legs. So if it's a male, not a problem, but females aren't going to like it. So if I point it out to my daughter, I'm going to get lumped for pointing it out. And she's only 5, coming on for 6. But the most common thing is mental health. 99% end up with mental health issues. So that's all of the things that potentially, and some of them aren't even really potentially issues, to be honest, that things that you can easily, like for instance the first and second toe, not a big issue. Most people wouldn't even notice it. For instance, if my daughter's got her shoes and socks on, nobody's going to notice it at the end of the day. How often do you look at somebody's feet and think, bloody hell, look at that, she's got a bit of a separation in her first and second toe? Not something you're going to really notice. There are some things that they can suffer from which are more serious. They can be susceptible to things like epilepsy, which I won't go and talk about because I do suffer from epilepsy myself, leukemia, thyroid issues and heart issues. But they're not the end of the world. Kids with Down syndrome can live really happy lives. To be honest, I'd actually say my daughter tends to be happier than me and most kids that I actually know. And she brings a lot of happiness to a lot of people. So those are some of the most common, I say, ailments that people with Down syndrome can have. They won't have them all, but they will have some of them possibly. So for anybody that where somebody in their family may be pregnant and they've been told it's Down syndrome, or maybe you've fallen pregnant and really concerned about some of the health implications, most of them aren't really that serious, to be honest, can easily be lived with. So I hope this helps somebody out there. But for now, thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you all again a bit later.